I speak to John Penrose, the Conservative MP for Weston-super-Mare. Good morning, John.
Morning, James.
Couldn't the Chancellor have gone further yesterday?
I think he went a heck of a long way, but you're absolutely right in your opening comments that what he's facing is a sort of complete double whammy. Everyone knows that it's not his fault that we had a pandemic. It's not his fault that there's a war in Ukraine. But as a result, the impact on inflation and on all living standards is pretty awful. So he's got to do what he can. But I think he's being honest about it, and I think we all need to be honest with ourselves. No politician can sort of solve all that problem. No one caused it in this country, and no one's got a magic wand to solve it all. But you can do whatever you can to try and reduce the pain at least. And I think handing back, in the form of duty cuts and tax cuts as much as you can, so that people have got more money in their pocket, and just helps everybody to deal with those rising prices. Isn't perfect, isn't the full answer. There isn't a full answer, but he's been pretty ambitious, I think, without driving up the nation's credit card, which is the other thing which would be a disaster as well.
But I mean, on things like benefits, as Tira mentioned there, nothing on universal credit. And of course, the uplift that did come in with universal credit through the pandemic was scrapped in October. Do you think that is maybe an area where he could have done more?
Well, he already did quite a lot, don't forget. Last year, he cut the thing called the taper rate, which is the equivalent of how fast if you're earning a low wage, how fast your universal credit gets withdrawn. So it's the equivalent of an extra tax, if you like, for people on low pay. And he cut that really quite dramatically by 8%, 8p in the pound last autumn. So he's already done quite a lot. But you are right. The sustainable answer for anybody on universal credit, as that gentleman pointed out, he said he's trying to get back to work, and good for him, is to equip people with the skills and whatever else they may need, so that they can get those jobs. Because actually, there's more vacancies. I mean, I run a jobs fair in Weston-super-Mare, and we've got employers queuing up to find people to work. So the sustainable answer for all this stuff is to get people into work so that their universal credit can be just a top-up rather than anything more on their income.
And one of the big headlines to come out of the spring statement was this 1p cut in the basic rate of income tax, but that's not going to come in until 2024. What is the point, John, in delaying it for 2 years? Surely that help is needed now.
Well, it's interesting. He said by 2024. So there are those of us like me who like the idea of lower taxes in general, who hope he might be able to get there a bit earlier, but we'll have to wait and see. The simple answer is that because I mentioned earlier on the importance of not running up the nation's credit card, not sort of extending the government's debt, because interest rates are going up, and every time that happens, the interest payments on the government's debt go up, and you don't get any nurses for the interest you're paying on your debt. So we want to try and minimise that if we can. So he can't do it just yet, but I think it's the first time that I can remember, I suspect many of your listeners this morning will be able to remember, that a Chancellor has said, I'm going to cut this even though I can't do it today. That's a pretty big, bold, ambitious promise. And the thing which I like about it is it's the kind of promise that's almost impossible to back away from. So he's kind of deliberately painted himself into a political corner there. And I think that's good, because it means that it's very likely to happen. The question is, I think, when.
Do you think there's an issue, John, that people like Rishi Sunak, who is a very wealthy man, may not be able to fully understand the situation that some people are facing at the moment? I mean, we heard yesterday from the boss of one of the big food banks, I believe, saying that people are not wanting to take potatoes from them because they don't want to have to pay the energy bill that would be required to boil those potatoes. I can't imagine Rishi Sunak can really know what that feels like, can he?
Well, I have the advantage, because I work with him. He's knocking around the Houses of Parliament, which is where I am today. Incidentally, given the sunshine, I'd far rather be on Western Beach at the moment, walking down the seafront. But there we are. I'm in Parliament because we've got to vote through the reductions in the fuel duty, so to make sure that becomes law safely today. So that's why I'm here. But I can tell you, having met him and talked to him quite a lot now, that he does get it. The thing about modern Britain, I'm pleased to say, I think this is a huge advantage on where we were a generation or two ago, is it's not so much a question of where you're from, it's a question of where you're going. And so people will listen to either Rishi Sunak or to David Cameron before him or to any previous Prime Minister, and they'll ask themselves that question about, does this man or woman get it? Do they understand what we are and where we're going and the struggles we're facing? And I can tell you just as a personal thing that Rishi does, but obviously your listeners when they hear him on the radio, see him on the TV, they'll have to form their own conclusions and their own judgments. But from a personal point of view, I think he does.
And just finally, John, the whole issue around energy bills seems to really come down to the fact that we are still far too energy dependent in this country on energy that comes from abroad. Is it time to look again at things like tidal power? Obviously, you're an MP for Weston-super-Mare, Bristol Channel, second highest tidal range in the world. Maybe there's more we can do there. Or even, it's been mentioned, should we look at fracking again, on the Mendips even?
So I'm completely with the cause. In fact, I've been one of the earliest advocates of trying to wean ourselves off not just Russian gas, which isn't a huge proportion, but we do still use some in this country at the moment. But foreign forms of gas is necessary so that if the international price starts to spike up like it's happening at the moment, we could be insulated from it in future if necessary. And that's partly renewables. Yes, absolutely. You can't just click your fingers and whistle up a wind farm. It takes a couple of years to build, but we've done a lot more of that than anyone expected, and we need to carry on doing more and building yet more of that sort of stuff. Yes, absolutely. We've got to be careful that some of the alternative forms of energy, some of them are actually really expensive. And there's no point in just saying, well, it's an alternative form of energy, we're going to build it, and then discovering that it's even more expensive than Russian gas. That would just be jumping from the frying pan into the fire. But yeah, you're right. Things like tidal power, if it can be made to pay, at the moment it's appallingly expensive, but if it could be made to pay, yes, absolutely, we should be looking at that. The Bristol Channel's absolutely stuffed full of that. Fracking is a lot more difficult. I think you'd need to get the scientists happy about the risks of earthquakes to sort that out. Now, if you can solve that, if clever drilling technologies can make that happen, then people might be willing to look at it again. But I think you'd need to answer that question, and before you start sort of going back to fracking on the Mendips or anything like it.
John, thank you. John Penrose there, Conservative MP for Weston-super-Mare, with his reaction to the Chancellor's spring statement.